welcome everybody. So I'll be your moderator for today's session. My first duty is to introduce Dan, but I'm also going to be handling the Q&A portion. So I'm throwing a link into the chat for slido.com where you can pose your questions as Dan is presenting and during the Q&A at the end. Prefer if you could post them there. If you do post them in the chat, I'll add them to Slido because it also allows you to vote up other people's questions so we know kind of what are some of the priority or more interesting questions or repetitive questions even that you might have. So Dan is the head of the Furniture Bank, where he has been, and I'll let him do a more fulsome introduction of himself in the Furniture Bank, but he's here because I've been following the work that he's been doing at the Furniture Bank around AI. They are one of the nonprofit pioneers in Canada who are looking at how can we use AI as a critical tool, right? So instead of being intimidated or overwhelmed with AI, what could it do for us? How could it help us in our work? How could it provide efficiencies? How could we harness this to make our work better or easier? They've gone as far as using it in a marketing campaign, which I'm sure he'll dive deeply into today, but also created a responsible AI manifesto. And that word responsible is an essential part, I think, of what we want to focus on today, is that how do we use AI and really technology more broadly, ethically, responsibly, in a client-centric way, in a way that works for us as workers, as organizations, as community leaders, and for the communities we serve. So I'm going to hand it over to Dan, and without further ado, Dan, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to learning from you.
Thank you. So I thought I would spend today trying to convince 100% of you to lean in and start playing with AI. Because when every place I've been using generative AI since the summer of 2022, which makes me supposedly an expert, it just makes me earlier. So I wanted to share some slides to pull you through sort of my personal journey about how we're applying it in Furniture Bank, and then help bring it into your own lives and some easy ways to really repeat what I did and what my staff do, because we can all learn how to use AI in a way that fits our particular needs in our particular roles at any point in the day, all day, every day. I've been with Furniture Bank. It's my 11th year. And I'll talk about what Furniture Bank is and the like, but we've always had technology as an enabler for us to be able to do more, to reach more, to support. So I want to dive into that. In theory, I'm going to successfully share my screen. And I'm happy to answer any question about AI. AI is like talking about food. It is such a vast topic, and there's a lot of misconceptions out there. And I use the term being AI augmented. You'll hear all sorts of things out there about AI replacing and doing all these things, but I really look at, for our sector, the use of AI is very much about using it in a way that is not just responsible, but beneficial for the work that we all do. So without further ado, here are some factoids you may or may not know. These are recent stats from 2024. And it more or less says all of you, I'm going to be binary and a bit controversial, none of us are using AI in a meaningful way. 2/3 of us say it's a lack of familiarity that we feel stops us from using it. 40% say nobody was educated in AI. 80% lack an AI usage policy. And yet we're all seeing an increase in need. I know my organization's seeing a decrease in resources. So that's the reality that we all live in. And I know we can talk about the challenges that we face. But my point of view is, we as organizations and individuals can do business or nonprofit or however you want to define yourself as usual, or you can join me and Marco and a few others in this weird way where maybe you triple your impact or quadruple it. In my case, over the last 2 years, I've been journaling how much extra free time I've created using AI. I'm finding every week I'm getting about 45 minutes back to do other things. Now that could be just read a book, or it could be do more stewardship, engagement, whatever you want to do. But you multiply 45 minutes a week by 52, that is an immense amount of time applying a tool that for the most part is free and sitting on your phone or your computer, and you can use today and now. And I'm assuming many of you recognize what this is, the infamous scientific calculator. Now, if we were in person, I would say show of hands who had one of these. And many of us did. And the follow-on question is, how many of you used, there were lots of scientific calculators. It had lots of capabilities. It required humans to work. And it gave us answers. Many were wrong, many were right, because if you don't use it properly, it was feared at the beginning. We had protests in the streets about calculators coming into our world. Most of us stick with the black buttons. 1 + 1 =. I was one of the few people who said, what are these magical buttons? Because in a show of hands, some people were like, oh, I really, really like the log button. And this is AI, is that if you're just going to stick with the black buttons, you're going to think AI can't help you. So when I look at AI, it has all the similarities that I saw as a scientific calculator. Many, many different models. An immense number of capabilities, well beyond what a calculator used to do. It can see, it can hear, it can talk. Like the number of ways that you'll be able to apply it in your uses are all possible. It requires humans to make it work properly. It will also give you correct information. It will also give you wrong information. It's feared at the beginning, and I suspect it's going to be very accepted by the end. So I personally believe that every single one of you can start using AI today. I believe you can become very familiar with generative AI. You may not be Marco and radically changing the infrastructure of your organization with AI, but you can certainly be comfortable with it and know where it will help you personally in your career or even at home. It's smart enough today. I can take a picture of my fridge and say, what can I make? And it will actually tell you, and it will give you recipes. Again, if you're a chef, you'll have to determine if it's really good or not. Most people say they don't have a policy. I'm going to give you a free policy to start with. Already exists, and then you customize it for your organization. And I really do believe that you can start the journey of figuring out where you want to augment your own organization. That's what I believe can occur today if you are curious and if you will start the journey of learning, because it's not hard to learn. So I call it homeschooling. I'm going to point you to some free things to do or a book to buy, and then you just start. And you're starting the journey that I started 2 years ago. I'm no different. I just started earlier. People say it's going to be expensive. It's not. All the tools I personally use in my day-to-day, for me as an executive, cost less than a coffee a day. And in most cases, they're free. So I want to start with why Furniture Bank, why I believe from the organization I'm accountable for is AI important. So here's what Furniture Bank's issue is. That is an AI generated image, by the way, because we all know housing is incredibly hard to find. We also know it doesn't magically become furnished and equipped and ready to welcome a home. And it's one thing to help one family at a time. It's another thing when there's tens of thousands of people who need furnishing. So I'm going to walk you through 3 truths. Every year, North America destroys 12 million tons of furniture and home goods every single year in landfill and incinerators, including things that are sitting in boxes, ready to go. Furniture is the 3rd most expensive purchase that all of us will make in our lives, preceded by a house and a car. Currently, when we do the math, if you were to walk into retail and have to furnish an apartment, you're looking at over $8,000 of free cash you need to actually equip an apartment from nothing to fully equipped. Anybody know any social programs that have that type of money to furnish and equip a house? No. what our research is showing is that we have millions of people who have housing but do not have furnishings. It is a form of hidden homelessness, furniture poverty, squalor is another good word for it. So Furniture Bank is an organization. We're based in Toronto. We service predominantly the city of Toronto, but notionally anywhere. But we're very focused on that transitional, social, affordable rental housing, trying to make sure that when families are moving, that they're able to get those goods. So we have this term called homing. Housing is empty. With the goods and a bit of transportation, families can create homes. In our case, the cycle time is we're going out to Jessica's home to remove her sofa and dining room table, bringing it back to the local furniture bank in Etobicoke. Families are coming in, curating their home based on the community and corporate donations that we've received. And then we're delivering it back out to them the next day. So the cycle time for Jessica's donation of impact is 72 hours here in Toronto. The time we see with our clients is very short. When the family comes in and they're selecting, they're there for about an hour, and their delivery team is delivering for 45 minutes. So we're a moment in time, and we know we're doing good because we get the anecdotal feedback. But it's when you meet a mother who 10 years ago got a home from Furniture Bank, and she tells me, this is a personal story, that because of having a furnished home, she was able to keep her family together. Because of keeping her family together, here she was in a grad program debating other grad students on the importance of furniture. So our posture is, if it's 1 million people in Canada and there's 12 million tons of furniture being destroyed, how can we help more people better? Lots of photos. And it is family of 1, family of 13. There is no group that is not affected by this type of poverty. So our posture, and it used to be, how can technology at Furniture Bank get more furniture? But now it's, how do we use AI to really augment the work that we do to help get more furnishings into more homes in Toronto, in the GTA, and across Canada. What I mean by Canada is, because we have a lot of technology in play, we've actually built a model that other charities can plug into our infrastructure and essentially spin up their own furniture bank and allow us to help them with that collection of donations, and let them work with the agencies and the families to distribute those things. So if that is of interest, I know Jessica and I are having sidebars about Peel Region, but if anybody thinks, boy, furnishing homes is a real pain, but boy, wouldn't it be great if we can have a program at scale that has some funding that goes with it. We have a methodology that it might fit, and would love to talk to you. Anyway, I digress. So our journey, you can all do it. The only thing that can stop you is if your board or CEO, ED, says no. And then I would be worried, because AI is here. It is not going away. It is like arguing gravity away. It is here, and it is changing our world as we speak. Today is the very worst AI we will all use today. Tomorrow will be better. So for me in 2022, it was that time of the year. It was like annual campaign, fundraising. How do we do it? Now, in the type of work we do, how do you show ethically the squalor and pain of a child sleeping in a bed of clothes? That's what they call poverty porn. That's exploitive. So we've never been able to actually show what it looks like. And yet we had pages upon pages upon pages of stories. And in July of 2022, there was this thing called Midjourney, which would take words and imagine what those words meant. And we came up with this campaign called "The Picture Isn't Real, the Reality Is." And we took the stories and the words that the clients gave us and gave their words power and let AI visualize, well, what does it look like when your child's sleeping on the floor? And we ran our campaign around that. And for us, it started as the fundraising. How do you get in front of very busy donors who are receiving solicitations from 88,000 charities across Canada? And for us, it was also a way of bringing the stark reality of the type of poverty that's behind closed doors. So we did actually created 40 different views, images, imagine pictures, but driven from the words of the clients that we support. If you're interested, there's a QR code that will take you to the full gallery. And what that led to was us busting open a mindset I've always had. If anybody's put up with listening to me, they already know I don't think like a traditional charity executive directive. Whenever I hear they say, or we've always done it this way, that was always, Dan would go the other way. That's me. But when I looked at what AI was starting to create the potential for, I started to see AI being able to really augment the way our sector works. So, I have that desert over on the left-hand side of that image because, it's for the amount of money you need to spend to use AI, even in the most basic but profound ways, is peanuts. It's not a lot of money. You can make it bigger, and I'll talk about that. And I know Marco talked about it last week. But you can AI augment everything you do in your organization in sensible ways that help you help more. We created a manifesto. Now, let's be clear. The manifesto is a policy. I created it for my staff, for them to have a working guide. And I'm using this metaphor of a jungle. It is a jungle. You can quickly get lost in it because of how fast it's changing all across the world. You have to intentionally want to follow it or stick to a guide and have a group of people to work with. So it is a working guide, is intended to give my staff empowerment, but also accountability for how they'll do experiments. We want to be very ethical and transparent when we're using it. And all of these things we've also taken policies that were already out there and adjusted it for what is a furniture bank and how we will be using AI. And a lot of it, like any policy, is giving the ground rules that if somebody asks, how are you, that you can answer. Most of you don't have an AI policy. You have DEI policies, you have harassment policies, list all the other policies you have. You need today an AI policy, because like it or lump it, there's shadow AI use. What is shadow AI use that you mean? It's your coworkers who are bringing their own AI to work because they've already figured out it's a huge productivity tool and are using it at work without management actually articulating how they want it used. So there is a risk by not having a policy and engaging in this conversation to those of you who are EDs or in places that are accountable for that. I have it as a web page. It's a manifesto. We evolve it. I'm a marketer by training. Manifestos are far more interesting than policies. But a lot of it is a guide that we're evolving it. And we continue to experiment. That's important. You're experimenting. Because the use case that each of you will have that AI improves your personal journey or your organization's journey are all going to be unique and different. Unlike a scientific calculator, this is where it's different. All of you can put 1 + 1 into a calculator. You will all get 2 back. But in generative AI, there are so many factors that will be very personal for each of you. So we started to really embrace curiosity. What if we could triple our impact? What if we got new superpowers? What do I mean superpowers? to create parking the ethical issues of photographing children and families in squalor, the cost, complexity, we could never have done. And yet now I could give our clients power in their own words and have photos to have a conversation about this type of poverty. Cut costs. We all have expenses. They aren't always people. We can eliminate and automate the most tedious parts of our jobs. So we can do higher value things all day, every day. And there's always a conversation about AI replacing work. AI is going to disrupt jobs. It isn't necessarily going to replace them. But on my perspective is, we talk about decent work in our sector. We never really talk about making the work more decent in the decent work movement. And using AI in beneficial and responsible ways gives you the opportunity to make the work that your teams are doing better, more creative, more gratifying. Because we all have the not fun parts of work, and AI can help augment those things in places. So that's our mindset when we look at it. Easy places you can all start with. Images, if you need to illustrate, if you need marketing, if you need social media, AI can help you today. If you use Canva, it's there. In fact, AI is jammed in all of the tools you use today. Doesn't mean it's helpful, but they're there. Opportunities for video. Today, I can take text, turn it into a video, and have those videos translated and over to 200 languages. The old way, go shoot a video, then go translate them all, we would never afford. We would never do, because operationally, it would be too complex. Now you can. All text can be translated into words, text written, audio, and video, all available, all ready to do. And words, this is, in Furniture Bank's case, we don't have dedicated fundraisers. We have a grant writer who supports me, and then we work through the grants, and AI augments working through. If any of us who are fundraisers on the call, we take the grants, we take what they care about, we take their questions, and then we apply the full, this is what Furniture Bank is in excruciating detail, and map what they want to what we are. And that gets us a good first draft that we can then fine tune and refine and then submit. And that allows us to do the fun parts of fundraising and spend less time on the process of fundraising. You can all start and should start with what's easy, what's low cost, what's low complexity. In AI augmenting both your own role, but also your own organization. So for Furniture Bank, now we've just implemented, this is where you're starting investing. We have an AI augmented phone system to help with, we run a social enterprise model, so we compete with junkers who are happy to contribute to that 12 million tons of destroyed furniture. So we have an AI augmented phone system that helps simplify coaching. It's following sentiment. Anyway, I could take a whole webinar on how it's helping. One of the things I like is I can say, what are customers asking on these calls? And I can actually get an answer. And then the marketer in me says, well, then I can create that training material out on the website and video. So those questions don't have to occur. We're looking at training videos. So we run that support service model where we support other charities running their own furniture banks, like Matthew House in Ottawa, Redwood Park Communities in Barrie, Oyatipi in Winnipeg. We provide training videos that historically were very time consuming. Now we can blend screenshots with AI and actually create robust training videos that, for a fraction of the effort and energy, time being the big currency. So your own journey is equally possible. All you have to do as of today is do the following. Read. This is my prescription. Pretend I'm a pharmacist. I want you to read one book. This is where that'll cost you. Then I want you to listen to a few podcasts. go take some classes. One of them I've got a discount code for, and the other one's free. And most importantly, use it everywhere as your constant companion and learn how it can help you personally. It's not like Google search. You can't just put in an answer. It is very much like a university intern, like a grad level, really smart, but really inexperienced. And if they are your teammate, your co-pilot, your wing person, however you want to frame them, if you have it up and you try different things, you're going to find very quickly, this is helpful, this is not. But you have to, as you'll read in the book, you really need 10 hours of just using it before you'll very quickly identify where it is of most impact for you in your organization. So, co-intelligence. Remember, AI, this generative AI is the first invention that is happening all at once everywhere. Every other invention in time, it started somewhere and spread. But everything that's happening in AI that's affecting us today in Peel region is also occurring in Jakarta. It's also occurring in London, England, and Johannesburg, and everywhere else. So this is an invention and an innovation that is spreading all at once around the world. And it's very hard to internalize what does that mean to me as an employee, as a parent, in our role in society. This is the only book I've come across that is accessible. My rule of thumb is my mom will put up with me and read one of my books or watch one of my videos, and she'll tell me quite quickly if it's too nerdy or geeky. My mom read this and she thanked me for it. So this is an accessible book that will help give you some constructs on what is happening around AI. It's not about necessarily in work. It's about AI in its totality. And it just came out in April, so it's still current and accurate. Podcasts, they're free. These are the ones I personally listen to. If you're going to do just two, the AI Daily Brief, it's 15 minutes a day, and that at least gives you the headlines of what's going on in this weird, massive world. Just so you feel that you have a sense on trends and directions and things like that. If you want to get a little deeper, Everyday AI. The only podcast that's really talking about how AI is being applied in the nonprofit space that I've come across is Fundraising AI. They will bring on different guests to talk about different things. Just listen to them and soak it up. That's all you need to do. Free training, October 1st, fundraising.ai is putting on a free summit all day. They are bringing the who's who of all the AI experts it's fundraising with a dash of nonprofit. Again, most AI conferences are more about business. And they aren't really interested in responsible and beneficial AI. They're about profitable AI. So this is embedded, very much aligned with the issues and themes that we care about. So that is free all day. There's a fellow, Tim, that he and I have met over the last couple of years because we have a similar journey. He has created an AI for anyone course. It's $99. He's getting me an affiliate code, and I'm passing on the discount onto that. So I'll get that added. It's a 1-hour boot camp that's intended for all of you that if you've not started, it's just getting your feet wet, your toes in the pool, and start using it because it is just that accessible. Fundraising.ai has a free nonprofit AI policy. You could literally copy paste, put your name in, and you're at least got a version 1. Like all policies, they change, but you at least have one that becomes a conversation point with management. But it is perfectly fine. And generally, fundraising.ai is always providing podcasts, conferences, and other opportunities for learning how to put AI to work for use. If you're looking at bringing AI into the organization, I didn't put it on here, but it very much starts with whoever is in charge. I'll pick on Jessica. If Danelli doesn't believe in AI, then AI goes underground. But if Danelli says we, United Way, Greater Toronto, will become a AI augmented organization, then there's a whole cascade of things that you can do. Look at why you would want to augment your organization with AI. There are certain things that AI will naturally lend itself to in your own organization, and it will be different than your next door neighbor. Most conference, any panel that you get on generally has Microsoft or Salesforce or Blackbaud, or you have consultants and platforms and softwares who their why is, well, they will say beneficial, help the community. At the end of it, their why is sell something. So be mindful of who you're hearing from. What is their why for talking to you about AI? Go find your fellow AI curious coworkers. They're out there, but they're also probably afraid to mention, like, I'm AI curious. But we at Furnish Bank, we created a small group. I know there's like 3 or 4 of us that are more on the dabble experiment early. And I have some coworkers that when you figured it out and it just works, then I'll join. And that'll be the same with everywhere. Like pivot tables in Excel. There's a handful of people who are like, it's the best thing in Excel ever. And others who are like, oh, I'm afraid to touch that button. It's okay. Find those who are curious and start the conversation, and then start very small, low risk experiments and share that with your coworkers. I wish I could capture the look of wonder and delight that we all have. I am sure Marco had it. There was a moment in time where Marco's like, oh my gosh. I've giggled sometimes by the magic that is possible when you put it to use in your own environment. And that's part of it, just share and discuss, and then look for the bigger opportunities. Because if you go and read what we all remember, this during the blur, there was this company called Moderna. They did some vaccines and stuff. They've gone all in. They're at the other end. They've made the whole organization all AI. And if you want to see, the case studies out there, say case study AI, Moderna, they've gone to the other end of the journey, which is everything's AI, to give them the ability to create better vaccines faster. That's their why. So there is a huge continuum, just like food. There's craft dinner, and then there's 9-course meals. It's all food. And AI has that same complexity. And a lot of it's for you to just start your own personal journey and then start to apply it within your own organization. And I will go to questions because this is where the fun begins.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dan. So I'm going to repost we've got one question, but I want to editorialize a little bit before we dive in, if that's okay. And one is to say that when Dan showed the scientific calculator and you started positioning yourself, was I this person who focused kind of just on those low buttons or on everything? And I can say to you that I had friends who used those scientific calculators and used all of those functions, and I did not. Technology intimidated me in high school. I had friends who were coding. We're talking about the 1980s here, people. People were coding in early languages. It was a complete black hole for me. And what I prove to you is that you can learn this. So if you're wondering, I didn't use that scientific calculator in terms of those rows, I wasn't one of those people. You can become one of those people in part because the technology has become easier than ever before, right, Dan?
Yeah, because building on that, thank you, Marco. So back then we had to push buttons and hope we remembered how it worked. What we're finding today, this is research that's a week old, is that those people who are in fine arts, who can actually communicate and articulate what they need, they're the experts. Because if you give AI, please write me a haiku about refugee settlement in Peel region, it will. It'll be a bad poem. But if you gave it a more fulsome conversation about all of it, AI will do it. So your interface isn't memorizing manuals. Your interface is being clear on what you need. And that's why that's I guess why I love getting on these panels is you can all start it literally today for free, and you start your journey, and you'll have your aha moment, and you'll have your giggle moment. You'll have your OMG moment when you look at what will this do to if you have kids. So this is like the invention of electricity. It is a disruptive invention. We can't change that. It's here. But we can understand how it will affect us personally, in our families, and in our organizations, and lean in and have ownership of there's a conversation about AI has bias. I flip it around to say, yes, it does. And if our sector gets behind applying our bias to the models, isn't that a good thing? But if we step back from AI, businesses will happily train their models, and the bias will only get worse. So if we as a sector don't engage with AI, we will be left behind. It's one of my is if we all get involved and all start highlighting how it should change the way the work happens, organizations will pay attention.
Absolutely.
Can I?
Hanadi, yeah. So just for folks to know, we're mostly focusing on Slido. I'm very happy to do the interaction. If you can raise your hand, though, so I know that you want to speak, then I can call on you so we avoid kind of chaos. We've got 130 odd people here. So the reaction button at the bottom of your screen, and then raise hand, and that will let me know you want to speak. But Hanadi, clearly you want to speak, so go ahead. And I'm just going to go close the window because I don't know if you can hear it, but I've got construction on my street. So Hanadi, please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask, and I will be right back.
Oh, thank you so much, Dan, for the presentation. It's very, very amazing. There are lots of fears with using AI, and I notice really that AI will replace human being. And this is really something that we keep talking about in management meeting, and we don't see the other side of what AI can bring, but is it going to replace human being? But it's still our AI is always being controlled by human being, developed by human being.
Yeah.
But we are going to see lots of jobs are really dropping out, and this is the fears of many people really of starting using AI in a way.
It's a good fear, but let's break it down a bit. So there was a time where this thing called Excel arrived, and accountants were afraid they would disappear. And I can run through lots of examples where a new technology arrives and there's a fear that jobs will disappear. The reality is that jobs will change. That is a certainty. I have a personal belief that it's those organizations, those individuals who lean into how do we integrate AI into our work. They're the ones who are going to help shape how do we want work to work in our organization. There are companies who their mindset is, boy, wouldn't it be great to have no employees? But what we're seeing in AI output is you need humans to get, you need a human in the loop is the throwaway line. You need a human to, marketers as a function are likely going to be one of the most affected groups in there. So you may not need as many marketers, or you may need a different type of marketer, but you'll still need marketers. There are certain tasks that AI does really, really well. Translation. I know some of you have social enterprises doing translation. As a social enterprise, the headwinds are against you, but that's not because it's out to get you. But it's like if you were a fax maker and the internet arrived, it's unfortunate. But today, we could, go look at, I can add a little plugin to my website and it can translate into 220 different languages that I, as Furniture Bank, would never, ever contemplate translating the old way because it would be too cost prohibitive. So I think it's too strong a word to say AI is going to replace us. Will companies use AI to eliminate jobs? Yes, there will be examples. Will there be examples of AI augmenting and creating jobs? And that's why I brought up the conversation of decent work. Is I think AI can provide more room for your teams to do higher value activities and less of the commodity tasks. But it's something to be mindful when you start making decisions within your own organization about how you use AI. That's the choice of the organization. But I wouldn't agree with that. It's all AI will replace us. That's not going to occur, but it's happening. You have to accept it and work within it. I think there's that acceptance piece because AI is here. It is, if you have Word, who has Microsoft, who has Google, almost every IT piece you have has AI in it. It may not be great AI, but it's there and it's only getting better and it's only getting more pervasive. So you may as well lean in today to understand it and figure out how it applies to your personal career path, as well as how you could best use it for your organization.
Thanks, Dan. Priyanka, before I jump to you, I'm going to go to Slido because folks have posted a couple of questions there and I want to respect that. This is somewhat related, Dan, and I imagine you'll have a similar response, but the question is, what will happen to our human brain eventually as we become dependent on AI and not using our own brain for solving problems or creating solutions?
I move on to harder solutions, harder problems. We all use calculators. There was a time where you can't use calculator. You have to do it by paper. So my last 2 years, I have AI I have another screen to my right. It's there. So for things that I know, it can do better faster. Go do it, come back, and the human in the loop, we verify it. And then we improve upon it. In the same way, if we're in a restaurant, there are chefs, there are sous chefs. Like a restaurant has many people that ultimately create one plate. And AI can play that role. So if you let go of being responsible for your own material, then yeah, you will become reliant on AI to do things. And that's why I use the term augment. AI is augmenting Dan Kershaw's impact the way I need it to do it. It's also because it's the most powerful, even if you pay for it, you all break out a credit card for $1 a day, you have the most powerful technology ever. And what you do with it is up to you. For me, my mission, I'm trying to end furniture poverty. I don't want to see another child sleeping on a floor ever. That's why I use it. So if you're an artist, it's immensely powerful in helping you be creative. If you're a writer, it's immensely helpful in editing, and you can actually have it critique you like it's a coach. It can do it's until you use it and try all the different use cases. It's not just a calculator. And I use that scientific calculator. It's not perfect metaphor. But until you start to see what it can do, there's a set of questions that normally are asked that you will ask differently once you start using it.
And along those lines, one question, and I think you've alluded to some of this, but what are some of the tech basics that people need in order to start using AI?
A mobile phone with data, internet. That's it.
I love that, because it's not about tech, is it?
No. If you can write a sentence that's clear enough, your mom, spouse, or child would understand, you're good to go. If you were trying to build what Marco's built with his organization, it's more than that. But my message to all of you is, if you have a browser, you can go to ChatGPT right now. It's free, and you can start. The podcasts are free. You can start. Splurge for the Kindle, $16, and read the book, and it'll give you a better, I use the metaphor of a sandbox. It'll give you some frame of how the sand all works. The sandcastles you choose to make, on you. It's your choice.
And I would say it's less about tech and more about critical thinking skills, right? We're
Absolutely.
all becoming prompt engineers is the latest term, right?
Yeah.
Understanding the tool enough to understand how to ask it the question in the way that will generate
Absolutely.
an adequate response, and then being able to critically evaluate that response, right?
Yes. I did a thought exercise, and it's that we hear prompting, and I just heard somebody explain it the following way. I'm going to try it. We've all gone to a drive-through, and I'm going to pretend it's a McDonald's. When we get to the drive-through, we say, "I would like a hamburger," and we will get whatever McDonald's thinks a hamburger is. You could also go, "I would like 16 hamburgers, 3 of them with barbecue sauce and pickles and mustards and this, and I want this and 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 this," and submit. And when you get to the window, it will give you all of that. You have to verify they got it right. And if they didn't get it right, you go back and say, "You missed this, redo it." So it's less about so much prompt engineering, so much as being very precise. You're allowed to be verbose in your instructions. So if you only give it 6 words, you're giving it 6 words of instructions. Some of my prompts are literally paragraphs. Step 1, step 2, do this. Here's a document, read this PDF, check this website out. It's really capable, and that's why I use the idea of like a university graduate student intern. They're smart. But if you give them horrible instructions, if you've ever worked with a grad student, they can give you some really bad results, but they're smart enough they can give you some amazing results. But it's all just speaking English. And actually not just English, it's multilingual too.
And I threw a couple links into the chat for folks that there are people who have created formulas or approaches to show in part the complexity of, if you're in generative AI in particular, if you're trying to create a really useful response that isn't necessarily sourcing other links and things like that, but they talk about establish the role for the AI, create the write the action you want it to take, provide additional context, and then say, what is it that you want me, what output do I want you to see? Do I want a caption? Do I want a script? Do I want a workshop agenda, things like that. And then you can continue to kind of pepper it with questions. And so those formats or those frameworks can be quite useful.
And what I find my most common word in my prompting is rewrite, and then clarifying what I want it to change. And it will re-roll. I use the metaphor of rolling dice. Sometimes, oh, that was horrible. And you'll say rewrite and change a voice or add this or learn this. Because there's no penalty to it. There's no and I find I actually learn a lot in reviewing what's being generated. It forces you to be critical of what you're reading. But that is important. That is, you must verify what it creates before you can trust it.
Yeah, and you've created, I put in the chat the recipe you've provided on your site about creating AI photos, which I think again shows that there is a knowledge and learning curve to this, but it is not about tech. It's about understanding how to use tools. And just like you're using Microsoft Office and Canva and whatever tools you might be using, this is just another tool. And I think that's useful for people to understand and answering that question again. We've gone down a large rabbit hole, but I think it's important for people to realize that your experience as well is, I mean, I was looking at your your LinkedIn educational background, and it turns out we were at U of W at the same time, actually.
Oh, cool.
But you're not an engineer, right?
No, I'm a
You're
geographer
not a
by
mathematician or computer science professional, and I think that none of us are. I mean, I'm a poli-sci major, right? So it's like, we don't come at this as techies. We come at this as, how can I use this tool?
You didn't know Tamara Cook, did you?
Tamara Cook. That sounds familiar, but that's
She was a
going way
poli-sci at that time.
Probably knew her then.
She's my wife.
It's a small world.
Small world. But yeah, it's so easy because you just are interacting with it in the same way we chat with people. That's effectively what we're doing. We're chatting with an AI agent that has many superpowers. If you pay for ChatGPT, it can see, it can talk. There's a little experiment we're trying at Furniture Bank where I built a GPT, aka think of an Excel macro. Again, I just explained in English what I wanted it to do. There was no code involved. And I said, when you start, ask what language the client we're serving is speaking. And now going forward, when you hear Urdu, translate it to English. And when you hear English, translate it to Urdu. So if you came to Furniture Bank, the volunteers will guide families through the showroom to build their home based on the donated goods. Historically, we'd have a large portion where we couldn't speak the language given the number of languages that are out there. So we're now experimenting, and that same little ChatGPT tool is able to speak Urdu or French or Persian or pick a language. Is it perfect? Probably not, but it's a whole lot better than no translation services. And that was free.
Yeah,
so,
and
being
you're speaking
creative
to the right sector when it comes to that, because we know that machine translation is not perfect. And in some situations, like during COVID, we learned it can be quite dangerous, in fact, with technical English. But in the case of when you're there with somebody and you're face to face, this is as you said, an augmentation tool, right? That whether you're using Google Translate or ChatGPT's machine translation, you can check in, you can establish. It's not a document translation that someone will be using on their own isolated, but you can actually read each other's vibes.
Yeah, and it's important. The motto at Furniture Bank is progress over perfection. We often in our sector get paralyzed to, nope, it's not perfect, not going to do it, nothing happens. I would much prefer to imperfectly translate all languages when you come to Furniture Bank, and being mindful that it's not perfect, but it's better than, because we're never going to have, how many funders are like, give you money for all of these things. We're seeing a generosity crisis. We're seeing government funding going down. So we're looking at AI as creating more capabilities that we've never been able to afford with our own operating. So, and again, you try it. And if it's not quite right, we go back into the GPT and give it more detail in English. Again, no programming required. You can all make GPTs to repeat processes.
And going back to your earlier answer to the question about losing jobs, this is augmenting someone's ability to provide service and not turn somebody away, or not, but it requires a human in the loop, and that's what's also very important. It's not like I mean maybe one day, but right now it's not that someone goes to pick up a tablet that Furniture Bank has provided and said, enter your language and then interact with their AI chatbot. That may well happen one day, but someone is still going to be there to intermediate.
So, and it's contextual in that we are looking at experimenting with, on the furniture donation side, there's a large portion of people who are like, hey, they'll do it for free. No, we don't pick up furniture for free because we don't sell the furniture. We give it away. So we're looking at having an AI phone agent who will talk to Jessica 1, Jessica 2, Jessica 3, and 4, and 5 and interview, what do you want? What are you looking for? And for the Jessicas who understand this is a paid service to come and professionally remove your furniture and home goods, then we can pass them straight on to a human agent to have a donation call. And for those who clearly are like, charities are meant to do things for free, we can send them to the education side of things and not waste our very valuable humans. That in itself is 50% of our call volume, is people thinking we're charities, will do it for free, and we're obligated to.
So along the lines of augmenting, someone posted something in Slido which I want to read to you. So I have read this quote: AI won't replace people, but people who use AI will replace people who don't. Do you agree? Or what do you think?
I generally agree, and I think it applies to organizations as well. There's a conversation that I hear often. I'm 11 years young into this sector. I come from a for-profit background. The problem is worse in the US, but the number of, it's a commentary I imagine Canada and have talked about, is that there are a lot of organizations out there, many of which are trying to do the same thing. So there's a lot of organizations chasing after the same resources. And I believe it'll be those organizations that lean into AI and demonstrate, on a impact per dollar, et cetera, they're going to be the winners in the long run. If you sit on the sidelines and wait, it'll be too late. As I said, today's the worst AI you'll ever use, and it changes weekly. Marco, I don't know how much you try and keep up with it, but like, I was there when the internet started. It changed, but like literally every week it is moving at speeds that is hard to stay on top of. That's why the podcast is really important.
That's a great segue to another question in on Slido, which is AI tech evolving so fast that it can be hard to keep up?
Yes, 100%. So you're going to find areas that are of interest to you personally, that you can add it on social media, follow them on LinkedIn. I'm a former marketer, and there's another podcast I didn't put on there, but it's every week. It's a 1.5 hour deep dive on like really, aggressive use cases of AI in marketing, communications, social media, and all of those things. So there are, given your interest, there are going to be specialists that will provide the detail. I haven't found for our sector as a whole a similar set of conversations, because not a lot of organizations put their hand up to say, I self-identify as being AI augmented. They've done surveys in the UK. I haven't seen here in Canada, but I assume those in Britain are similar, is that they actually want us to use tools and be professional and be, as productive and efficient as a for-profit. And they don't, I've not had a single donor like, how dare you use this new tool? I've had a number going, wow, that's amazing. How can we help? How can we support? Or I'm picking you because you're being innovative. And I guess that's why I like being here, is like, you all have the right to be innovative. And this is the first tool that's free, and it's just start dabbling. Marco's self-admitted, I'm no nerd. And you just started. So you all can be where I am and where Marco is, but you have to start. And the effort to start is so low, there's no excuse than being afraid. And you don't need to be afraid about this. You need to be informed about it, which is easy to do.
You bring up a really good point about funders that came up in our last session, actually, which is, should we be asking permission? And obviously the answer then and now is no. But where are funders when it comes to this? Have you been, so they're encouraging you and in our case, IRCC is the biggest funder, and they have in fact funded a few projects with AI that are AI related. And most of them as, initial innovative projects to learn from. Have you been asked by funders, help us understand how we can support the funding of AI? Is that something they're looking to learn more about?
I'd love to say it's often. Right now, if you go to Grant Connect and type in the word AI, you'll get 0 search results. So there are no funders today in Canada that explicitly say, yes, we would happily encourage you. I am working with Counseling Foundation and some foundations out of Quebec who are interested in supporting, and that was me teasing them which is you funders love restricted funds. Why don't you force a restricted fund of $2,000 or something that you have to use AI in certain ways? Read the book, play with Poe, try Perplexity, like really low risk stuff. Because once you start, you can't, like, you're like, oh, it's moving from hand math to calculator to internet. Like, you can't go back because it's just such a productivity boom. In my case, I just embed it. We're allowed our admin. I also put a impact measurement tax, and I put a AI augmentation technology tax plus the program. So I don't ask for permission. I just say, this is the way it is. In order for my organization to remain relevant, productive, best of class, marketer, these are the things that we are doing. So be bold. You have a right to be bold. You're changing people's lives. You should be bolder than business.
I like that. Don't ask for permission. Just tell them what you need and build it into your budgets.
Yep. I've yet to have anyone say no. I'm not saying I'm n equals 1. I'm not statistically significant, but I've never had a funder push back on asking. So put it in there, because you don't need a lot of money to bring it to your wider team. You don't need a lot of money to experiment outside of yourself.
Excellent. There's a couple of questions I'm going to combine a little bit because I think they're related. So one you've talked about in your presentation, which is the potential for bias and discrimination and misinformation, and related to that. So as AI generated answers pull from their chosen sources, so how can we help AI help to provide current information and links to main and up-to-date sources?
Yes, good question. Great question. So it's two parts. As a sector, I'm talking to Bruce at Imagine Canada, we as a sector have to aggregate, I'm going to call it our biases, and make sure they get to the models that are being trained. But that's a super nerdy, Marco and I will talk about it offline, activity. But for your immediate use cases, the AIs are always being trained, always, every day. They get bigger, they get smarter and better. And they're always looking for new material to train. You'll see in ChatGPT, if you're using it, there's a button. Can we use what you're doing for training? Most people turn it off. I'm like, heck yes, you're meant to know what a furniture bank is. You're meant to know what furniture poverty is. You're meant to. So the bias is there. It's not a bad thing. It's that the information that is out there has everything that's out there. And to combat that when I'm using it is I'm uploading documents that are internal, or I'm pointing them to websites. So you combat the bias by applying your own bias. And because that's the funny thing, AI is super excited to make you happy. And that's where it'll hallucinate if you're not clear. But if you say, please refer to these sources and what you know, it'll refer to your website or your long form 50-page explanation of what is your organization that you can't give to a funder. It'll use that as a foundation for its answer. So you can avoid bias, but don't treat bias as a swear word. It's like search results. You go to Google, there's an algorithm, and it'll give you a result at the top for a reason. There's bias. So that's how I use it day to day. Is I'm always attaching links or documents to help ground it, to make sure it's staying in the zone that I want it to.
And increasingly, ChatGPT didn't do this initially, but they are now providing footnotes to source links of where they got some of their material. A tool like Perplexity AI has always been doing that, for example.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does, and you should check links. because
Yeah,
it provides misinformation from some of those links
absolutely.
sometimes. Yesterday I was using Perplexity, which I find is a really good tool
My
because you can actually
favorite
use
tool too.
multiple AI LLMs, ChatGPT and Llama and Claude, I think. So you can choose and see the different
Yeah,
nuances in the responses. Perplexity usually is pretty good, but I clicked on a link, did a quick search for the data, wasn't
yeah,
there at all in any form that they had quoted. And AI is very confident, right?
yeah. Wants
This
to please. Wants to please.
19.3% of these people said this, and it's like that. There's nobody said nothing about nothing,
Yep.
and you have to check that, right? This is someone described this to me as the AI human sandwich. You start with the human. What do I want to put in? What do I want to generate? What facts, what do I want to get out of it? Let AI do its work, and then you go step back in and
Yep.
say, now how am I going to use this, but how am I going to evaluate it, right?
Yeah. Like if you haven't been to Perplexity, I don't use Google search as much anymore. I use Perplexity. So go to it. Marco, I'm sure you'll put it in there. But perplexity.ai, if I'm meeting somebody new, put their name in. And it'll give you this beautiful summary with links like a stranger. I'm an introvert by nature. I'm not gregarious in the least, except when we're talking about things I find interesting. Perplexity can give me a breakdown, talk about this foundation, talk about this location, talk about anything. And it'll aggregate it from all sources, not just what Google thinks is the most important answer. The other tool that I use, I don't know if you've tried it, Marco, is called Poe.com. And Marco was talking about LLMs. There are all of these different engines, and I use the metaphor of walking down the supermarket in the junk food aisle. There's all the pop. All these LLMs are just pops, different flavors, different carbonations. They're just different. Poe on one subscription lets you access all of them. And the most interesting thing is you can start with Google, ask it stuff, upload documents, whatever. And right after it will say, would you like to try that with Sonnet, which is a different model? And then you can follow on. And what you'll very quickly see is some models are really good for strategy. So you're trying to come up with a strategic plan for the next 3 years, or at this moment in time, Google Gemini is amazing at bringing together. You can upload all the documents you have in your organization, feed it into Gemini and say, please come up with 3 hypothetical 3-year strat plans. And it'll do it. It'll do it better than if you give it to another. So Poe.com, that's one subscription, but you can try everything. And you're going to find some like Claude Sonnet is great for writing. Beautiful English. Far more, the most human English that you're finding. You can find other models like Facebook's. Its English is lousy. So they're all going to have personalities that you're going to gravitate to. In the same way, we have our favorite kitchen tool, we have our favorite. This is how, when you use AIs, it's not a single tool. It is many tools that you're going to come across and use at different times.
And that's where the importance of those podcasts, those books, the fundraising AI. And for folks who are thinking, well, fundraising AI, I'm not a fundraiser. Dan's here in part to show you we can learn from outside of our sector and sector adjacent. And if you're wondering, part of the schedule, for example, for fundraising to AI, AI skills and roadmap, leading your nonprofit to success. That's not fundraising related. Let's see here. AI from the top down, a fundraiser's handbook to strategic integration. I guarantee you 80% of that is a leader's handbook to strategic integration, not just the fundraisers. Here's a really good one, which is run in part by Meena Das, who you know, Dan, I'm sure.
Meena, she's great.
Is in BC and does a lot of work around data equity and AI equity and human-centered AI. You can listen to her on my podcast where I interviewed her, but she navigating AI and data equity in nonprofits. Here's what we learned from a survey of more than 700 nonprofits in the US and Canada. That's related to our sector. From data to impact, leveraging predictive and generative AI for targeted philanthropy. Well, again, 80% of that is just how do you leverage AI for prediction and generative AI for targeted, well, you want to do targeted service delivery. So they're targeting people that they want to donate. You're targeting clients you want to serve. The techniques and the frameworks and the basics are all the same. So I think this is another thing that when you look at some of these things and you think that's not really me, it is you. It is you 80% is there, and I guarantee you 80% of the lessons will be useful for you. So it's something to think about when we talk about, oh, this sector or that sector, or a word that doesn't sound like your role, like you're not, it's not settlementpractitioners.ai summit, although maybe we should have one, right? It's, well, and this is kind of it. This is the first one, that these 4 sessions with PNSG is the summit. But it's important for people to step out into these other spaces and realize that they're just as relevant for you as well.
Thank you, Marco. That was a perfect use case of Perplexity.
Absolutely. Oh, and by the way, you checked out the link to Perplexity. So for people who haven't gone in the chat, I asked Perplexity to tell us about Dan. So I do have a question, Dan. Like, do you really have an eclectic career spanning over 2 decades? I love the language, right? It's like it's probably pulled out of your own LinkedIn profile, right?
I'm a geographer who went into telecom, who went into internet gambling, payment processing. I was part of a collective that cleared 1/3 of the world's internet gambling payment processing. I ended up at Lavalice doing mobile dating, then web hosting, e-commerce, mobile publishing, and then a headhunter said, have you ever thought of running a charity?
I love it. So if you're wondering if your path can meander and get into AI, oh my goodness, obviously, right? Anyway, so it shows us, that's a great example. And if you click on that link, folks, what you will see there is that Perplexity sources, right? At the very top, it'll say, oh, here are the, I think, 9 sources that are used, and you can actually click through them. And then what it'll do as you're going through the answers, it provides these little footnotes to those links, which you can check for.
And you should try it for your own organizations. Try it for yourself. Perplexity does a lovely job aggregating, like, who are you on the internet? And if you get no search results and you really want to be known, then there's work to do. Or you may see misinformation. They're like, we have to go correct that. So for me, it's a go-to tool professionally and personally, including which dog breed should you get for small children who are hyperallergenic and like beaches. It'll give you an answer with references.
Awesome. A practical question.
Yes.
And this is because, most agencies are Microsoft 365 agencies these days. Copilot is the thing, right? Is Copilot better than GPT or different, or could you recommend other AI
Are there any Microsoft people on the call? No, seriously. No, it's horrible. I'm a power user of Microsoft. I have it, and there's sometimes where I have like 4 different agents all trying to help me do exactly the same thing. I find it's very powerful, but it's slow, and it can do things, but I've yet to find it do things as well or as quickly or to the level I want it. I want the control. Copilot doesn't give me the control of the voice and the tone and the dictate. It's Microsoft's, Jessica, I'm picking on you, Jessica's your photos there. It's like, Jessica, I'm going to tell you how to write the email. It'll write a good email, but it certainly doesn't sound like Jessica. And it's expensive. There are no nonprofit discounts. I have talked to them about it, and their message off the record is because of how energy intensive it is, they want to get it right before they make it cost effective for everybody to use. My sidebar is, personally, I would give Poe $20 a month. That's essentially even charge it in Canadian. Far faster than, because it like a calculator, can use it when I want to. Whereas Copilot, it's in everything, and you don't necessarily know where it is. Anyway, I'm sure it's the worst Copilot I've ever seen. It'll get better every day, but right now, I would not be renewing my Copilot experiment. I've been experimenting with lots of little tools, trying to find the right balance.
Awesome. Really good question from someone. How would you correct misinformation on Perplexity? And I wasn't sure, so I asked Perplexity, and I will share the response. There are ways. That's a really important point. I wonder if you've had any experience with trying to correct or update information that you find.
I have not, So I'm curious on the link that you're going to give me. But yes,
this is specifically how Perplexity says. So they have a flag icon somewhere below the answer. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, where's the flag?
URL description examples.
Oh, report. Interesting.
Okay, cool. Generally,
So,
it's because you can go into the detail, and it's great for articles.
but it's great. It lied to me right away. Users can report inaccurate information using the flag icon below the answer. There's no flag icon below the answer, man. There's a little 3 dots and I can click on report and then I can do it. So this is the beauty of live misinformation, right? I asked Perplexity and it sourced that. Well, let me see, did it source it? Yes, users can report and it sourced its own support. How do I submit a bug? Okay, there's even an email address. So don't believe everything you read, but experiment and be curious, right? Like I know 3 dots means more information. And instead of a flag, it had a downward thumb to report something. And you're thinking, I don't want to click on that. I want to tell them it was bad. And this is where the tech I find, I don't know about you, Dan, this is where I find the tech annoying, right? Who decided 3 dots was something I should click on for more information?
Yes.
Or 3 lines, right? Like the iconography on online is infuriating. And I looked it up once. The cultural differences for those 3 dots in some countries, like we call them, the 3 lines is a hamburger. The 3 dots, some people call like falafel. Or a skewer, for example, in different. It's absurd, but we have to become comfortable with 3 dots. Okay, and then I click on reports. I don't know what that means. Hopefully it'll open a new window, and in this case it does, and I can say this is inaccurate, it's too short, it's out of date, it's too long, and and there's space for me to say how can the response be improved, right? So you can, all of that takes time, but that's part of our entering our own bias and our own information. But that takes time, and that's something that I think is really important to realize. If you want to do that and you're training it not just on your own data, but as you're using the tool, you want to try to take some of that time from time to time. So I will, after this, I'll go back in and I'll say in that, I'll report that they actually provided the wrong information according to the current version of their user interface. May have been the last version, may have been 3 versions ago, but it's somehow referring to the wrong information. But all of that requires a commitment. So, okay, this is interesting. It might not be as relevant for you, but can you give us some real life examples from your experience of AI? Oh, you have actually, other than media creation, more like client engagement. So the translation is an example.
Translation,
right. So live with a person. And I just want to be clear, like we keep thinking about AI as this thing that I use on my screen. But what you're providing is a live usage of a tool with somebody, the phone, exactly. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So if you have ChatGPT on your phone, all of you should do this. Volunteering all of you. Get ChatGPT, go to your fridge, take a photo of your fridge, what's inside, upload it to ChatGPT, and tell, what do I have in my fridge? It will do a pretty darn good answer. And then you say, what can I make with this and pick a cuisine? And it will tell you. If you like drinking, you can take a photo of the spirits you have. What drinks can I make? I've watched somebody, OpenAI, who did a video one, who was visually impaired, help me secure a taxi. And the AI is smart enough to say, taxi is coming. And he ordered a taxi, and a blind person in London, England, got a taxi and got in it. So AI is not one thing. It's not a screwdriver. It is. It has so many uses, and a lot of it for me are tools. I'm using Scribe to help document processes, and it will AI generate all of the documentations. Click on this, click on that. So things that I could manually do, AI is doing for me. I can do video avatars. I'm experimenting that with donors. It is, if 1,000 people give us $10, best practices say I should send back a thank you video. But Dan spending all day doing 1,000 videos is practically not possible. So I'm experimenting that I can get an actual virtual avatar of myself and say thank you. But again, it's experimenting. It's not, none of this is locked in stone. So if you find something that works, do more. If you find something that doesn't, stop doing it. The we're currently, the question is, where else are we using it? Inside of the organization, we're looking at, these are things we're looking at, so future tense. AI dispatching. So we have trucks all across the GTA. We're everywhere, collecting everything. 3 sofas in this postal code, notionally the data is there that AI can help sort it, that if we had multiple locations, because we do know from data that when a family has nothing, we know statistically if it's a family of 6 what they need based on old data. So there will be a point in time in the future, not this year, that AI can say, make sure the following trucks go to the following places and offload these so that they match the incoming families for the next 2 days. So that AI, there's predictive AI and there's generative AI. They both are, predictive AI has been around for 25 years. You use Netflix or half the tools we all use without even thinking about it. It's AI. They just don't talk about it being AI. So it's really, I could go into any organization and look at any function and point to ways, not that you should, but that you could. And that's why I always go back to the why. Why do you want to automate it? Why do you want to speed it up? Why do you want to change it? If you've got a clear why and you rank it and like this why, absolutely. Augmenting our phone system, absolutely is a great way to give donors a better experience and help our staff have better jobs, because it is not fun to be yelled at. Like really, it would be considered abuse every day because you're a charity charging. So now I can filter that. And my staff can work with donors who understand that we provide a service. And those people who have a bias, the charities, we all do everything for free and operate on sunshine and rainbows. We can point them to other ways that, yes, free is the curb, free is dragging it, taking it somewhere else. We're looking at it in accounting. Again, as you move down the spectrum, this is accounting. You've got to be really careful with it, but you certainly can apply AI to augment your accounting. But you'll go at the speed your organization wants. My reality, I'm the nerd in the building. I'm not surrounded by nerds, so it's a slow process. So everybody has the book, and not everybody's read it. And I tease them about it. And every so often, I finish the book. And did you learn something? Yes. And we've got them into Jasper for marketing. And now social media is, again, it's not generate and send. It's, we call them SFDs, a word I won't say, first draft. And then we as humans will go, pretty good, make it better, and then we'll use it. But the amount of time that takes shrinks. So literally everywhere you walk in your organization, you can AI augment the function, but you don't need to, unless your organization says that is a profound improvement on the service we're trying to provide.
That's helpful. That's really helpful. And I think that's important for people here. This is a long-term process. You haven't resolved everything. You haven't brought everybody on board. You're still working on that. And that's useful for people to know. 2 quick last questions. I know we're almost at the end of time. The first one I'll answer, which is, there are concerns using AI as a search engine. Has that changed? No, but it's different. Now that there are AI tools that are revealing sources, you have a better sense of where the information and the sources are coming from. The last one is a big one, but I'm going to ask you to answer it quickly because it's not up to us to resolve, but it is a concern. So is there a collective cost? Are there concerns for the environmental impact of use of AI?
There is. There's a lot of factoids that are out there. AI requires servers. Servers are expensive, and these are very expensive servers. I could go find a whole bunch of discussions and conversations that this will spark an energy renaissance, and that it will force us to be smarter with how we generate sustainable energy. Good thing. And then there's other conversations, just like politics, that would be polarizing. And part of it is it's here. The service exists, and whether so I want to be aware and I want to be informed, and I do follow the different companies, how they're actually powering it and how they're disclosing. And I'm sure at some point, I'm not there yet, I will start choosing to use this because it is a more environmentally sustainable tool. But it's so we're 2 years into this entire new industry that has spawned tens of thousands of companies across the world and changed everything on its head. So it is something to watch and be informed about, but it's I guess be involved in the conversation by using AI and learning, because it's already being used by everybody else around you.
Awesome. I'm going to hand it back to Jessica. Sorry for taking us right to the wire, but I want to thank
Thanks, Marco.
Dan. This has been fantastic.
It
I
has
hope it was helpful.
very helpful, and I think we're seeing that in the chat box. I think, Dan, you helped step us through the process of learning, like a whole new industry and a whole new, I guess, dynamic in the world that's shaping the future, and really how do we step up to be informed, how to innovate in that space and be bold. So thank you so much for that. And I think you've given us permission to experiment and try new things, and you know, maybe even have more discussions amongst ourselves as we learn together. So
yeah, if you all got into it, there is going to be next year that sort of practitioners how to really work within the nature of what you do. There are going to be some very targeted learnings to share, like spells. Like once I know how to do something, I can give it to Marco and Marco can do it. So I'll finish with a Harry Potterism. We can all be muggles, but I choose to enter the wizarding world of AI.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. I think it was a great discussion. Thank you, Marco, for moderating as well.
Thanks,
And
Marco.
really happy that you could come, Dan. Thanks so much again.
My pleasure.